Good evening, and thank you for being on the 23-24 budget journey with us. We are at a point where tonight we will present the budget to you so that as a board, you can formally adopt the district budget for 2023-2024 school year. And then, of course, our community will vote on the budget on May 16th. The budget is aligned with our mission, which calls us to empower our students to be lifelong learners, dynamic thinkers, and compassionate, contributing citizens. It also defines in our mission the type of environment that we want to create for learning. We talk about having rich, differentiated academic programs and a safe, supportive environment, and an area where we can explore individual passions and leadership and service. I think tonight's presentation on recognition really showcases some of the things, even though they've been sustained and happened over many years here in Pleasantville, they are opportunities for students. So specifically, I'm thinking about the creative writing contests, where that is open to all students on the grade level to really maybe hone a skill that they're interested in, maybe explore a skill that they're not interested in. And I remember in our Peeville Press, it talked about our student who didn't think that this was for them and ended up writing a piece that was award-winning, and it was so far out of their comfort zone. So I think that these are examples where words and our mission are really brought to life. And again, our budget supports our priorities, which are outlined in our mission. Another area where we look to ground our decision-making around budget is through our strategic plan. So our strategic plan outlines the 6 strategies that we're looking to focus on during this 5-year period that we're in with this current strategic plan. The 6 strategies include leadership, curriculum, wellness, communication, infrastructure and resources, and partnerships. That brings us to where we are with our budget planning for the 23-24 school year. We are proposing a $59+ million budget. This budget comes in under the allowable tax cap of 2.44%, and it is a 2.43% increase. Overall, the budget change is a 2.79% increase over last year's budget. I wanted to take a minute to highlight some of the areas where we have increases that are different in the 23-24 budget, substantially different from our 22-23 budget. So the first area that I wanted to speak about was employee benefits. We have over $1 million increase on this line. This is due to basically 2 areas where there's substantial increases. One is in the health insurance premium costs, and the second is in ERS costs. Another area that I wanted to point out is in the utilities fuel line, almost $300,000 increase on this line we are planning for. As you have all experienced as homeowners, we experience it on managing 3 buildings and several other properties that we're responsible for in managing fuel, natural gas, electricity, etc. So all of our utilities have gone up due to inflation costs. The next line is a debt service line. I want to point that out as a $90,000 unique cost for this year that we didn't have last year. One of these board meetings many moons ago, it feels like, we talked about the middle school HVAC project, and we talked about the financing that we received for that project. Part of our upfront costs that we'll recoup later is an output of $90,000 for year 1 of the debt that we'll incur from that, which will end up being 0. Did I explain that? Thank you.
Correct.
Okay. I got to correct. I can move on to the next line. The next line is contractual increases, almost a $1.3 million increase. These are part of our budgeting process. We have several contracts with several different unions that we support. They call for annual increases in salaries, and this is a contractual line increase. The last piece that I wanted to explain that's going to be different for 23-24 than the 22-23 is you see a decrease of almost $1.9 million. This is in the interfund transfer line. There were monies from previous years. So last year, if you recall, we funded part of the $6 million middle school HVAC project through all different kinds of funds and moving monies around from our different interfund transfers. We are not doing that again this year. We have the money for that project. We are moving forward with that project, but that is just a change in terms of the budgeting. Anything else on expenditures?
No.
Okay. So in addition to what I've explained, when we look at budgeting and planning, we really look at 4 pillars of a school budget. Managing or maintaining our class size. When our 3 buildings did their budget presentations, all of them talked about somewhat steady enrollment. We did look at increases in our special education population and in our 504 population. So while we maintain class size, we do have to make adjustments to our programs and making sure that we're able to meet student needs. Another one of the pillars is around infrastructure. One of the areas that we're seeing changes in our budgeting is in our technology infrastructure. So that's about our ability to provide instructional technology, manage the technology that we have in a responsible way, along with keeping up with tech security and managing, the way I see it, it's like our highway, and we have put more vehicles with higher, stronger power on this same roadway, and we need to just make sure that we're keeping it up to date, and we need to make sure that we're keeping it safe. So we do have changes in our infrastructure as it's related to technology. And lastly, I already talked about the contractual obligations and that we have to make sure that we're keeping up with our contractual obligations and what we have in those different contracts. So again, we boast that this budget is below our tax cap. The one thing I didn't mention yet is that part of the mission is to provide a safe and supportive learning environment. And when we talk about safety, I talked a little bit about the technology safety. You can talk about it in the realm of physical safety, but then there's also a piece around emotional support and safety. So when you look at our personnel additions, we are moving, we are at the end of very important, that ESSER money and those grants. The district used that money to support a K-12 SEL counselor across the district. With that grant ending, we're bringing that position into the budget so that we can sustain that tremendous work that position has brought to our students, along with the school psychologist. So originally, that was a half-time school psychologist. Over the course of this school year, the board approved it becoming a full-time school psychologist, and we're looking to maintain that in next year's budget. In addition to those 2 positions, we have 2 teaching assistants at our elementary school that we're looking to bring into the budget. I spoke a little bit about meeting the programmatic needs of our students. One of the areas where we have an increase in our budget line is around special education. We need to make sure that for our students that are district residents, that we're able to provide the appropriate education for them and making sure that their individualized needs are met through appropriate programming. I also mentioned technology. This is just a visual of our infrastructure and our team that we have to support all of the different realms within the technology world. Very proud of this and happy that we're able to manage and maintain. We were kind of adding very quickly a lot of technology and a lot of different pieces, and now we're kind of playing catch up in order to be able to manage and sustain all of the technology use. I'll transition to revenue. John, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So when we talk about the revenue, obviously we presented a balanced budget. So the revenue total is exactly the same as the expenditure. Like Dr. Desai, I would just highlight a couple things. Like most of the Westchester School District, the property tax is the major revenue source for our school district. So it represents about 70% of our total budget. And this year also, the governor has fulfilled her commitment to all the school districts. So we are, next year, we will be fully funded with the foundation aid, and therefore you see a large increase of $2.3 million in foundation aid, and that represents the state sources increase. And then, like Dr. Desai talked about earlier, last year, coming into this year, we funded with the fund balance for the capital project. So next year, we don't need to do that, and therefore you see a decrease of $2.3 million there. And the charges or services, this is for our tuition. We'll see an increase of $300,000. And that's basically the major changes of the revenues. You want me to talk about this piece?
Please.
Okay, so this is the calculation of the tax cap. So, you know, people talk about tax cap, they always talk about 2% or CPI, whichever is less, which is a little bit make it too simple, because really you have to go through a formula. And this is the actual calculations of the tax cap. I think one thing I want to stress, there are 2 points. One is that the CPI that we encountered last year was actually 8%. But unfortunately, we can only use 2% in calculating the tax cap. So you see the 2% at about the midpoint on the sheet. And the most important part is that the tax cap is at 2.44%, and our tax levy increase is at 2.43. So we are under the tax cap, and therefore, when we have the budget vote on May 16th, we are seeking a simple majority vote. Mm-hmm. So as long as we can have more than 50%, the budget is passed.
Right. Thank you. Do the next one.
So the next 2 slides really is just one report card. It's just that it's very lengthy, and therefore it's put into two parts. This is a very important document that we have to show to the public, which we presented in March. And also, the board has to approve this, so later on, when in the resolution, you will see approval of the property tax report card. The tax report card basically talked about what is the budget, and also has a very simple calculation of the tax cap, and then also have some disclosure of the reserve funds. So that's all included in the property tax report card, which the board will have a resolution later to approve. The second page.
Okay. Thank you. So I started off by saying thank you for being along on the journey. We have had several steps along the way with the budget preview, the proposed budget, school level and instructional level budgets, and then we moved on to athletics and non-instructional. We had a budget forum on the 13th, and we are now at our adoption of the budget. The next 2 steps that we will have is on May 2nd, we will have our budget hearing, and then we will have the big day of May 16th for the budget vote. So just as a reminder, voting will take place in the middle school in the multi-purpose room on Tuesday, May 16th. We begin at 6:30 in the morning, and we conclude at 9 o'clock at night.
Thank you so much. I just want to say a quick thank you.
Sure.
For putting together, to you and the whole team, for putting together such a thoughtful budget that accounts for all aspects of our kids' education. Really, just grateful. So Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to echo that and all the work that you and Dr. and Mr. Chow and building level principals and the administrative staff and facilities management did to make this. You know, people look at these numbers and see really large numbers. The reality is the real inflation number is like 10% or higher. We're mandated by, or we're given the state number of 8%, and then told we can only raise it by 2.44%, even though the utilities can raise whatever they like. So really, thank you for bringing us in under the tax levy and figuring out how to do that without cutting anything and still providing a great education and experience for our students. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's a very good point. You know, when the tax cap was created, they didn't consider certain things that should be exempt. So, you know, just as you said, we're limited to this formula, but then when you've got utilities that increase at such a degree, or health costs that increase, or other things, we have no choice but to somehow figure out a way to squeeze that in with a very sharp pencil. So, Mr. Chow, Dr. Desai, thank you very much for having a very strong pencil sharpener in your, in this district to make it
We
all
were not
happen
always
for us.
well liked by the administrative team, I'll tell you that much. But, you know, I think one of the things that John has kept, you know, saying is that really being funded by Foundation Aid this year was really a tremendous help for us. That, you know, financial planning doesn't happen, and like we present a budget year to year, but there are so many things that we have to think about in terms of long term and how we're going to be able to sustain the programs, all these, you know, all of those things that I talked about. How are we going to maintain these facilities? I had the pleasure of being at the BRS PTA meeting today, and we were talking about you know, long-term financial planning that goes along with all of these long-term things. And it's the same thing that happens like in your home.
Sure.
Right? Like you don't have, without financial planning, you might not have the finances for when the roof breaks, right? That like now you need to pay for the roof. So you're like thinking, okay, my roofs are coming due, but you know, and you have to create these plans for them, and this really having like long-term thinking, and then also being able to make adjustments because, you know, the inflation happened this year.
Right.
And we didn't plan for that.
Right.
So, you know, you also have to be able to make moves
Right.
with what you have. So I'm grateful for the community support of our planning and our process, and really just looking forward to seeing everyone on May 16th.
And the community voted in that capital reserve fund last year,
Yes, it
which
did.
is a great benefit because that gives us the chance, if there's anything extra that we can, you know, put aside because things do come due.
It's like a little tool in our back pocket that we
Right.
have.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions on the budget? Can I have a motion to approve the 2023-24 budget?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?